Hi, everybody. Good morning. Welcome to the Cybersecurity Insights interview program. I'm Ariel Evans. I'm your program chairperson and your host for today. And this morning we have with us one of our oldest advisory board members, Vlad Shapiro. Vlad has been with us since the Rutgers days and has come over to join us on the Pace-Seidenberg program. And we've known each other for quite some time, and we have had Vlad on panels before. And one of the things I love about Vlad is his level of understanding of the topics and his level of enthusiasm. So please help me to welcome Vlad to the program, and I'll just give a brief introduction of his background for you and we'll dig right in.
Thank you very much, Ariel.
You're welcome. Thanks for joining us, Vlad. So Vlad Shapiro has more than 20 years of experience in information technology, digital security, identity governance and administration, identity access management, and bioinformatics. His expertise ranges from mathematical modeling of identity management data, analysis of current identity and access management practices, to mastery of IGA programs, maturity evaluations, and advisory capabilities. Vlad is a native of Kiev, Ukraine. He moved to the US in 1991. During his early career, he worked on analytics and clinical trials, data visualization, bioinformatics, CRM, and data mining. He has made several presentations and produced several papers that have been published on using mathematical apparatus in resolving real-life data analysis problems. Vlad has held senior advisory positions in identity governance and IT security, and most recently at TechVision, IT security and identity governance advisory firms, where he's published research papers on identity governance, and he's a founding member of ID Pro. Vlad is also the author of Custody Concept, Human Factor, and IT Security in IGA, which was published in a book called Custody, The Cost of Human Factor in 2016. Vlad, welcome to the program.
Thank you.
So first question for you is, how did you get into information security, and how did you become passionate about the human factor in cybersecurity?
Well, thank you for question. It is an interesting journey. You know, when I came back in 1991, I came to the United States as a graduate student in mathematics to Brandeis University. And originally I thought I'm going to be a professor, I'm going to be teaching. And in a couple of years, unfortunately, I realized that the teaching profession, even at the university level, is not exactly appreciated in this country, I would say this way. And the most thing what the university appreciated was grants, not quality of teaching. So after that, I decided to kind of look around a little bit, and I realized that, very soon I realized that I have an ability of combining two kind of, I can't call it opposite, but interesting things. On one side, I have an analytical mind. On another side, I love to explain, and I like to be I can't, now that people call it evangelist, but I like to be the person who can put some difficult terms in very simple things, and people can understand what I'm talking about, even if it's a very serious subject. So that was the beginning. Also, definitely 90s, the time of booming internet and dot-coms and technology. But I was always interested in something which is related to real people. That's why bioinformatics became one of my first elements when I started to use my mathematical knowledge into bioinformatics, which is analysis, mathematical analysis of the biodata related to proteins and genomes and things like that. And then after many different things I tried, in 2004, I became a member of the Corian team. The Corian was one of the first password manager and one of the first identity management tools available on the market. And I started as the professional services person. And it was very interesting because I realized that not only identity management is the crossroad of technology and humans, but it's more on the business and human side than anything else. That was my way to security, I would say this way. And since 2004, I started to get interested in it. It started with analysis and mathematics, technology, then it went to the business. And then I realized that it's all about people. It was always about people. I always was passionate about talking to people and understanding what they're trying to say, listen to their problems. But what I realized in our industry, the whole notion of identity and the whole notion of people was so limited to technology, and in the best case scenario, just saying like, oh, we have to protect our users from something bad. That was it, And I started to dig deeper, and it's gotten very, very interesting results. We're going to talk about that more, but basically that's my journey.
Great. And so we've been hearing a lot about the human factor, and at RSA a few years ago, that was the keynote topic, right?
Right.
So when you're looking at human factor, how do you view this? What's different about your approach, and what have you learned over the last few years that would help our audience to better digest the topic if they have a passion like you do for this?
Well, the difference of my approach is that I am following the steps. I'm not the only one of them, but I'm following the steps of people to say that the kind of a ideal beacon for us is what we call the people-centric security. So the difference between the current approach of most of the company take is the following. Most of them are saying, you know what, our users are the weakest link. So what we need to do, we need to make sure that our users will not go somewhere really bad places. We have to treat them like 3-year-old or 5-year-old children in the preschool, kind of trying to make sure they're following the rules, and we have to drill them on the rules. That's basically what people do in most of the companies, right? What my approach is saying like, guys, this is great, but are we creating security for these people, right? Are these people the reasons why even company exists? Why are we treating them that way? And by the way, why are we concentrating only on people who are supposed to follow the instructions? How about we also include people who make the rules and people who are supposed to enforce the rules? That's why I came up with this whole idea of basically talking about the policy owners or policy enforcers and policy constituents. So my approach is the combination of these three is the real human factor effect on the company. And we are not spending enough time of talking to policy owners and policy enforcers about it. All right, so here is an interesting example for you. Tell me, please, what kind of incentives the policy enforcers have. I'm talking about positive incentives, not being fired. Positive incentives for the policy enforcers to actually enforce the policy. Anybody? Anybody? No. Really, there is none. If you think about it, the policy enforcers are put in a position to enforce the policy they did not create, and very often they do not even believe it. And that's where the problem starts. The policy owners made a lot of policy based on the knee-jerk reaction on another security regulation or what happened in the next company, next door, right? Instead of discussing it with policy enforcers and policy constituents, right? And policy constituents become those people who just say, okay, you have to follow these rules. And if you're working for the enterprise, that's exactly what you do, okay? And my approach is different. They say it has to be a collaboration. And the most important thing, we have to develop trust between policy enforcers, policy owners, and policy constituents.
Makes a lot of sense.
Thank you.
Great. So the concepts in custody, am I saying it correctly? Custody, right?
Custody, that's right.
Good, okay. I'm known for mispronouncing things. Can you describe it in a nutshell in terms of like, what are the major points if we wanted to walk away and have a conversation about this?
Well, it's an interesting, for the very small audience we have right now, I'm gonna open up for you the secret, because the name custody contains the word which not a lot of people like to use in a corporate environment. The two, for me, like I thought for a while, like what are the two human characteristics which are the most, I don't call it dangerous for security, but kind of, kind of interesting for security, right? And I came up with the curiosity and stupidity. All right, curiosity, why? Well, most of the breaches happen because somebody's got curious about something, right? Classical example, if the door is closed and it said do not enter, right? people usually don't enter the door. I mean, in a regular situation, right? But if the door is ajar and there is a sign say, do not peek, what's going to happen? What do you think? A lot
You're
of
gonna
people are
pee.
going to just like, what's inside? Interesting. So that is a concept of curiosity, right? The second one is stupidity, unfortunately. That's what I call it, but it's a multi-layer. The third layer is like when people say, oh, we don't need anything hell. You know, we're all set. Nothing happened to us. We're nobody, like nobody cares about us. We're all set. We don't need anything, right? So we're happy.
So
We're fine. That's one
security by
level. Yeah,
obscurity.
exactly. And the second people say, oh, guys, thank you for telling us, but we already put all possible policies in. So all the policies are in, everybody's following the policy, everything is cool, great, right? So, and the next question I'm asking, can you tell me please, who are following those policies? And the most important thing, who are managing and changing them, right? So the next question is, and they're gonna ask me, why even ask? Like, what do you mean? We have policies. I said like, yeah, you do, but here is the problem. The policies are like laws. Why do we have Congress, really? Like, to change law, we already have laws, right? Same thing about policy. They have to be changed. They should be dynamic. They should be following a specific things, not just staying along. So that is
Right.
my question here.
So that's interesting because like we see over and over again with the digital asset approach that we have data retention and disposal policies, right? Which is saying about how many records you should have, the life of the records, and what is the care of those records in terms of archiving and disposing.
Right.
And, you know, as part of your data governance programs as well. And we see over and over again a complete disregard for them, where the business units think they need 35 million records in a database. And that's billions of dollars of exposures. It's uninsurable, it's unmanageable. And if you're a small, medium enterprise and you're doing $4 or $5 billion a year and you have a $6 billion exposure, you're not going to do well if you have this issue. So the other companies that are larger probably could, you know, buffer that, but obviously it impacts their growth strategies and their innovation that they're doing. That's one thing I see all the time in terms of the policy.
Coming back to custody, I haven't finished the story because custody, what's that? That's the cost of curiosity and stupidity, right? And why we're talking about the cost? Because our managers are reacting, our C-level people, on money. And now people say, why do we have a cost for this? It's like very simple. If you create a policy and people will deviate from the policy just to do their job, you have an extra cost, do you? Every time you implement the policy, you have an extra cost. Every time you try to enforce the policy, you have an extra cost. And if people believe in your policy, your cost is going to be what? Lower, right? So what I did, I created a model which helped us to evaluate a current status based on each policy, right? And kind of put a little bit of numbers behind it. How many man hours does it take you, right? How many people are supposed to do that? What are the possibility of improving it? Maybe communication-wise would be nice, right? So that is why the custody becomes in such an interesting point. And I hope that people who are on the call, if you have more questions, we're definitely going to have more conversation about it. I'm ready to open up for the world and people would like to use it. I believe it's very important to build that trust, right? To build that communication, because money is great for the company, but for the constituent, right? If they know that the policy is open and they understand it, why, then it becomes a completely different story. And by the way, talking about custody and all the human factor and relationship and trust, you know, I cannot I want to mention it once, I'm not going to do it again, but for my American colleagues specifically and for my European colleagues, I have a little symbol behind me a little bit. You know, if somebody see this is the flag of a country called Belarus. Right now, we're talking about human factor. A lot of our colleagues probably are from that country, and you probably know someone who worked for that, right? So please support them, because right now they're in very tough human factor situation, you know. And the reason why is because, again, there's certain policies, like for example, internet was shut down in that country to stop the protest. Guess what happened? People got on the streets, right? Because if they would have internet at home, a lot of people would never get out. So now here is a great example for you how to say that not very smart policy, and again, I'm not going to support any of those, but just saying, brought to even worse situation, right? And on a separate note, I hope everybody on the call remember that. I hope everybody stays safe, and their families stay safe. And if you, as I said, have one of the colleagues from Belarus, please support them. They need it now. All right, sorry.
That's okay. So maybe let's shift a little bit and talk about how COVID is impacting the human factor, and what are we seeing with work from home and the ability to stick to policies and change policies rapidly, and what are some of the current trends that you're noticing?
The first thing what we have to remember about working from home is like a classical joke. I'm working from home, or I'm leaving at work, right? So that's an interesting one. But the point, yeah, but the point is for a lot of people, unlike me, it's new frontier. They've never been in this situation. They've never been in a situation when they have to actually do the work, right, from home. So before, it was very easy. From 9 to 5, if I'm trying to access anything, good, not a problem. And if I'm trying to access anything around 11 p.m. or I'm receiving an email at 11 p.m., that looks suspicious because chances are I'm not going to even answer. I'm not going to even see it, right? That was a situation until COVID, right? Today, we're working who knows what hours. We have kids have to go to bed. So sometimes 10 p.m. is the time when you're actually working. So guess what? The bad guys know about that too, right? And the easiest thing to do for them from a human factor standpoint is social engineer you when you are tired, right? When you're tired, when you're exhausted. So emails around 10 p.m. saying, by the way, you missed the deadline. You're supposed to fill out that form yesterday. Why I haven't received it yet? Send it immediately, okay? If you receive that at 10 a.m. in the morning, you look around and say, oh, this is from my boss. You call the boss or send IM to boss, did you send me this email? The answer would be no. But at 11 p.m. or 10 p.m., would you do that? I don't know. I'm not sure. So people are using this factor. People are using the result that the completely different life we have right now. So, and they want to exploit that in their own benefits, right? So that is the number one thing. People are tired, and that's why they make mistakes. Number two things, companies counteracting that with serious measures and putting the tools on. You know what the people from the social engineering and the hacking side say? Fantastic. Let me do your DDoS attack, but not DDoS way, but the way that you can't operate. So I make it during the normal hours almost very hard for you to do something, while in the off hours, you can do more. Again, I want to push you towards that end. Another thing what happened is a smaller organization started to get even more attacks, because bigger organizations put themselves a very good security, VPN, controlling the VPN, things like that. Not a lot of small companies can do that. Not a lot of small companies have enough knowledge of how to do that, right? That is why it becomes such a big issue. So us as a professionals, I'm considered myself an identity specialist, identity professional. We have to educate not only constituents, as I said, but also policy owners, and tell them that, listen, in this time, you have to tell your employees, do not be afraid to send me an email at 11 p.m. if you receive something like that. Don't be afraid, because this is much better than just follow up on things, okay? So that is, to me, is the big, conclusion out of this conversation, okay? So,
okay. So
yeah,
let's talk about culture, corporate culture, and how can we make a corporate culture that is more aware and more inclusive when we're looking at policies around the human factor and factoring in, no pun intended,
yeah.
what we need to do.
Well, again, corporate culture should be people-centric. They should treat everybody as human being who works with them, not against them. They should not treat people as kids. They have to explain them what's going on. One of the biggest problems is a communication problem. I almost suggesting, and I do it in a couple of conferences, to involve psychologists, professional occupational psychologists, as a part of IT security team. Seriously. to try to understand what's going on, because there's something called the security fatigue. Have you heard about that term yet? I started to hear it more and more from guest psychologists, because people get scared. You know, unfortunately, a lot of us security people, I mean, I'm identity, I'm considering myself a good guy. Like, I'm a person who want to allow people to do things, not protect, you know, prohibit. But in general, it's a fatigue, because we're receiving so many emails about that, so many messages, so many trainings going on. Oh my God. And it makes us very, very tense, right? Then if there is a lack of communication, or the communication is, which we don't believe in, and unfortunately, as a person from Eastern Europe, you know, we're pretty skeptical of any communication coming from the top. So make it more open. Make it as an open table. Say, like, ask any questions you want, right? Do you want to know why we're doing this? Do you want to know what the risk you're taking? And my approach to this is, listen, the policy we create is a recommendation. This is the way we recommend you to do things. If you're going to do it this way, your risk is low of what you're doing, right? Your trust is high. What you're doing going to be pretty smoothly. If you need to go different ways for some reason, you can do it. But remember, as soon as you do that, you're going to be under strict control. You probably should use something called PAM, right? It's privileged access management. And everything you do going to be recorded. But it's your choice. If you want so I want people to come to me for questions instead of me lecturing them. And that conversation would be much better. I think it should be a difference in the culture, the change of the culture. Openness, trust, and really put the concentration, don't treat your users as bad guys, you know.
Right. And I think one of the things that we're emphasizing in enterprise cybersecurity in our program is getting people to understand the whys, because everyone wants to know why. It's like, you're much more apt to comply with something if it has a valid reason behind it and you understand it, versus just being told something and have to accept it on faith that it's in your best interest, it's in everyone's best interest. So having this dialogue around cybersecurity and this understanding of how cybersecurity actually protects the assets and how it works and what are the bad things that can happen if you have some types of access control issues that obviously you're not supposed to. This is important, and I think that is going to also be very useful. So in terms of identity governance, can you talk a little bit more about that and how that plays into this conversation?
Okay, so it was research was done, I believe, it was not Gartner, I think it was Forrester, a couple of years ago. They showed the research which said very clearly, saying the IGA, the quality of identity governance, has a direct correlation with security of the company, strength of the cybersecurity. Why? Well, it's very simple. If you are defining and you're monitoring and you're governing access of people to different assets in the company, and you do it in a smart way, not the prohibitive way, but smart way, then you're going to be in a much better shape as an organization from the security standpoint. I'll give you an interesting example. Everybody knows what attestation is, right? From our standpoint. Once a year, everybody has to look at what kind of access you have, and you have to evaluate if you still have it, if you still need it or you don't need it. Right? Well, this process is hated by everybody. And the most important thing, this process is the biggest process for rubber stamping. If I have a manager and I'm a manager and then I have 200 employees, do I really have time to go through every entitlement this person has, which means every right? Entitlement is the right to access, right? No, I really don't have that time. So what am I doing? I'm just rubber stamping most of them, right? If I see something really crazy, then, like, for example, some kind of a, tech support person somehow has access to accounting system, that would be not good, right? Especially production. So, that would catch it. But most of the time, it would be around stamping. So you know what some vendors did? They say, how about we're going to ask people to do self-attestation? What does that mean? Well, I'm receiving a list of actual access I have, translated from technology like AG group membership and blah, 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 to reality on business. I can do A, B, C, D, E, F, G. Do I really need that? And next to each of them, there is a risk factor. If I have this right, my risk goes up. If I have that right, my risk goes up. Now I'm looking and say like, access to the accounting system. Yeah, I remember I was testing it 5 years ago. Why do I need it? And my risk is like my risk score, 50% of this risk score is access. You know what the people said? Just, I don't need it. Just remove me. Success was tremendous. When they did it for the first time, the success was tremendous because people started to believe that the organization, instead of secretly looking at the stuff, what they have, they open it up and say, tell me, what are you using today? Are you using this? Are you not using it? And not telling people just to say, we're going to shut it down. You say, it's your choice. You want to be high risk, keep it. If you don't want to be high risk, ask us to remove it. We'll be fine. So that to me is a smart identity governance policy. The policy which combines the education for the users and also ability for them to make their own decisions with guidance, not restrictions from the organization. Okay, in terms of incentives, there's already saw a question about it. How many times you've seen the negative incentives, like people got zinged with an email, say this person, open up this email or try to open this and that. How dare you, things like that. Don't do this. You've seen those emails. I've seen it. How many times you've seen this email? Oh, dear John, or dear Mary, thank you very much for following our policy for a year. Here is $200 gift certificate for Starbucks. Have you seen many of emails like that?
No.
Me neither. But some companies start doing this, not only money-wise, but also recognize people as champions in IT security by just following the policies and maybe being active in challenging the policies and creating the policies, right? And defining and self-attestation and things like that. Because we have to remember, it's a group work. Security, IT security, cybersecurity, every person in the company is involved. But they don't know that. They think they're involved, like, as I said, children in a preschool involved in activity in the preschool. No. I want them to be active. And my recommendations for everybody, talk to your management, talk to your C-level, we have to change the attitude of people about us, about the security and then about the governance. And I think that is where governance and the security come together.
Great, it makes a lot of sense. So when you think about the concepts of trust and risk, how do you look at them? Are they opposing? Are they collaborative?
Okay, if I would do the poll today among the people here and give them 3 different answers: trust, and risk. And the 3 answers, like opposite, parallel, independent, right? Most of the people would go for what? Opposite. More risk, less trust. More trust, less. But you know what's interesting? It's applied to completely different subjects, right? For example, as a person to person, me and Ariel, we have not. Do we have risk or trust between each other? We have trust. Why? Because we know each other and we know for years certain facts and certain elements, and we can trust each other. So person has trust, but the circumstances around the person have risk, right? If I am stressed, my risk should go high, right? If I am relaxed, it should be low. If I am under duress, it should go higher, right? So risk is a different factor. So my answer on this is they are not parallel, they're not perpendicular, they're not opposite, right? They depend on each other sometimes, but sometimes not. It really depends on the subject or object we're applying it for, right? The assets of the companies, do we trust assets? What do you think? Or we risk, or we measure the risk? I would say the risk. How about devices? That's an interesting question. If the devices is trusted, or we're not called device riskiest device, right? We call them a trusted device. So what you mean is that we have to apply both measurements in the different situations. But again, if people want to know more about it, we can have a separate conversation. This is my opinion.
Great, that's exactly what I was thinking. I love how you explained it. So let's take social engineering and talk about that a little bit. Where are you seeing the focus now? Is it shifting from phishing? Are we still focused primarily on phishing?
I would say this way: the phishing is the easiest thing to do because it can be done by robots, right? Have everybody heard about RPAs, right? Robot processing. So that is the people. That is the organization who do the phishing. That's easy. So you just send it around, see what happens. But more and more we see targeted social engineering. And targeted social engineering becomes much easier in a COVID time because we do not see each other face to face, right? For example, it is how many of you received robocalls who pretend to be humans, who asking questions like, can you hear me? You heard that scam, right? Your answer should be, yes, I can, not say yes, I can hear you, because yes means consent, right? That's social engineering, right? Number one. So the next thing, what I'm saying is, social engineers today, they're targeting what they call the middle management, right? They're targeting not the CEO, they're targeting not the IT or security administrator or, database administrators. So they are targeting people who make enough decisions but do not have enough knowledge about social engineering. And a long time ago, most of social engineers targeted towards people were bars, conferences, right? Evenings when people are relaxed, right? Today, nobody's going anywhere, right? So the social engineering comes in part of the LinkedIn communications. How many, I don't know what's going on, but in the last week, I received 150 invites to become friends on LinkedIn to people I have never seen in my life, and I have no idea who they are, right? People think if a LinkedIn is a great style communication, I can see the person, I can see who the person is, where he's working. How do you know? If you have no joint connection between those two people, you have no idea. People are creating profiles on LinkedIn, on Facebook, on Instagram, on anywhere to bring your attention, and then started to do the actual social engineering work, which means starting asking, telling you stories, starting asking you completely innocent questions about, oh, I have such a nice dog in my house. Do you have a dog? You say, no, I have a cat. Oh, really? So as soon as they started to have this conversation, it's online. You don't know who you're talking to, right? They're going to bring you into the net and started to ask you questions. You probably have seen the movie Now You See, Now You Don't, right? When they got the password of the dude, right? By asking questions, batting like, do you have a cat at home? And his name is Fluffy, right? So something like that, right? So this is getting your security question, but it's not that. Not anymore. They're using this information to get, guess what? Your contacts. Because since you are getting this, right, now they're going to connect to your contacts and say, by the way, I'm such a good friend of Azariel. I know that her cat name is Fluffy. As soon as somebody says something like that, people immediately believe that that's a genuine request. So don't think that you are the target. Maybe you're in the middle person. So that is an interesting tactics today. And other tactics, what people usually use is scaring you, right? Classical story about IRS calling on the phone. You owe us $10,000. You have to pay it now by PayPal, right? Normal people say like, yeah, that's funny. But you know what? When somebody is calling you and say, you know what, your companies right now have a really big problem. They're not telling you that, but they're in a big trouble. And we are calling you from the agency who is actually researching them. So you have a choice. You're going to be in prison, or you're going to be indicted with a part of the company, or you can tell me you spilled the beans. And unfortunately, every company has something to spill, right? So that is another interesting tactic what people start to use recently. That's not what happened a long time ago. That's just very recent, because again, with COVID, we really don't see each other. We don't see each other's faces. We don't know what's going on. And it's very easy to assume that something bad happening and company doesn't tell me that, right? By the way, coming back to the company culture, if your company culture is better than that, then chances of you being social engineered is less. But again, remember, they're using us, they're using the feelings, they're using this, people got scared, people got, and definitely not the last one, they're using you to, if you are greedy. That's classic, right? So saying your company, what is your salary right now? You probably receive less than X, right? But do you know that your company recently made the Y amount of money and they never shared it with you? And you're working, not 40, but 60 hours a week for them, and they don't pay you? Do you want to get back on them? You get a little bit of money from them? Some people react on that too. Not the first conversation, but that's part of the story. And we as a professionals have to explain people that, it is something, it can happen to you. Doesn't matter who you are, because not necessarily you're the target, right? I don't know. Do you like Westworld? Was the latest edition from the HBO? I got a great phrase from one of the movies. It's like the guy, one of the characters already were able to hack one of the most powerful men in the country. So like, and that person said, "How did you do it? He's the most secure." But he's like, "No, it was hacking him was impossible, so I'm hacking his personal driver." So talking about suppliers, vendors, right, and all of that beautiful thing. Do you think vendors are getting fished right? Not fished, but social engineer right now? Oh my God, yes. You know how? Very simple. I'm calling the vendor and say, I work for XYZ company. I know that you're betting on the contract. Do you want me to help you? If you're a vendor, what are you going to say?
Of course.
Here we go. You will not even check if I haven't worked for this company. I can create this profile for 5 minutes just for you, send you a LinkedIn, and then delete it 5 minutes later, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that is the angles we're taking today. So coming back to trust, in my opinion, recommendations are very simple. You have to build the trust with the person before you trust the person. How about that? And this is the rules of social engineer today. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Vlad. That's great. We're going to go to some of the questions now.
Sure.
From Urs. So she wants to know, have you been involved at all in profiling human system behavior to try and determine which employees are higher risk and more likely to do something either bad, not too smart, whatever, that would put the firm at risk?
Sure, absolutely. I worked before for the company called Securonics, who is one of the top leaders in something called SIM and UEBA, which is User and Entity Behavior Analytics. And that was one of our targets, and we're analyzing a lot of behavior data. And as a human factor person, I say this is the future for sure, but the problem is, again, it's a computer analyzing the human data. You need specialists, you need people who understand people, not technology, to be able to decipher it. Yes, there are obvious things, right? If persons started to somehow, some way, copying tons of files and sending it to private emails, that's kind of a bad sign, right? If the person is shopping around on the job looking sites and they're hitting your competitors, that's the problem. But that's obvious problems, right? Most of the time, what I say that this is what we can catch right now with technology, but what we can't catch with technology is if the person is tired, if it's fatigued. Do you know that, for example, pilots, drivers, right? Anybody else who's doing doctors, they have time offs, which are what? Required. Why we don't have the same for IT administrators? Why we don't have the same for people who are privileged access and could get really tired and make bad decisions during that time, right? So in my opinion, the human factor behavior should also include human in it, not only just behavior. And it also should be open for the users to say, we are monitoring you. And by the way, if you need help, let us know. We're not going to fire you. We're going to help you, right? And if we see something weird, we're going to let you know that we're seeing something weird, right? Because we don't want to be your spies. We want to be helpers. You are working with us. We want to make this company happy and successful, right? That is my answer.
I actually saw a program that was in Israel that was somewhat aligned to that, where they were taking pilots and they were putting electrodes on them, and they were monitoring them when they became tired. And when they became tired, all of a sudden the plane would go into some type of an issue, right? And then they wanted to see how they would react when they were tired. And I think what you just said is so. Why didn't anyone think of that before? Why didn't we think about privileged access people and they're going to get exhausted and they're going to make mistakes? I think that's just very insightful on your part, because it's like one of the first times I'm hearing about it. And I think that that's really something that we need to consider. We have 3 questions that are kind of related on incentives. Okay. So I'm going to sort of put them all bundled together and you can answer them as you like.
Sure.
So, creating incentives to instill behavior and digital transformation, changing behavior is the biggest hurdle. Someone wants to know, do you have a program that identifies outliers?
Yes, absolutely. And again, outliers is based on, as I said, on my program, it's based not only on technology like UABA, but also it should be based on the human side of the story, right? And it should be also based on, as I said, the kind of psychological situation also. But yes, most of the time where behavior comes in, definitely we have to look for it. And every time there is an outlier, again, my recommendation, talk to the person, find out what is going on.
And then also along the lines of incentives, when people make mistakes, what are the most effective ways that you see to correct this behavior, to either reprimand about the behavior?
We have to find out why people made the mistake. There could be many reasons. It could be just tired. It could be that's unfortunately it's not they don't know another way to do the job. That's deviation, right? And they did it for a good reason. And also, it could be just that the person was not educated. You know, we never thought about it, not educated enough, right? When it comes to something like phishing, there are many programs like KnowBe4, and there are many other companies who are doing but there is not enough, as I said, understanding and compassion to people who make mistakes. Don't zing at them, please. Try to understand what's going on and help them not to make it in the future.
Mm-hmm. So another similar question along that line is, if someone makes a large mistake, like a worker transfers $1 million to someone at 10 p.m. at night, for example, how does human factor deal with that employee? Is there a method there that
can
help?
So again, the same thing. You have to find out why. What was the reason why this person did it? Was it a malicious? Was it just a mistake because the person is tired? Was it, what happened? You need to investigate, but again, do it openly. Talk to the person, find out what's going on. Maybe, again, as I said before, maybe this person worked 12 hours in a row. I remember I made a mistake when we did some production stuff at 2 a.m. in the morning. Never going to do it again. All right. Because it was 2 a.m. right? So we need to find out what's going on. And then maybe companies should put this person on kind of required leave. Like to say, you need a vacation for a week because you're so tired and exhausted. Okay. But I can't give you a recipe until I know what's going on. So please just investigate and help.
Great. That makes a lot of sense. So from Joe, first off, thanks for your thought leadership in the area. I was a Curion customer from 2004 to 2008. It was a great tool set. Good to hear you mention that you were there.
Yes.
Please give us your thoughts on using gamification to assist with end user learning. I follow the work of BJ Fogg at the Stanford Pervasive Technology Lab, who uses the formula behavior equals motivation plus ability plus a trigger or a prompt. There is a brief short gamified learning modules that give users a memorable. I guess he's asking, is there a brief short gamified learning module?
I love gamification. I love it, but I love it in a positive way. All right. Nobody wants to lose. Why people don't want to play games? Because they're afraid to lose. Ask me to play golf, I would say no. I never played golf in my life. Okay, so I'm going to look ridiculous on the course, right? So give them ability to say, no matter how you're going to end up, just for playing the game, you're going to get some good incentives at the end. All right, that's number one. Number two, along the way, let them make mistakes. Because in my opinion, people learn from mistakes more than they learn from doing straight right? So push them, show them their mistakes, and let them get out of there, right? Because nobody likes to have a red, sign saying you failed. No, don't do that. Help them to get the way out, all right? So if you can do that, if those games could create it like that, fantastic. The people will learn from mistakes, they will recognize them, and they will never repeat them again. And the most important thing, if they feel there is a mistake and they know how to get out of it, they would feel much better and much confident about what they're going to do next.
Great. Also from Joe, biometrics and identity management have become controversial. In particular, retina and iris scanning plus facial recognition for privacy reasons. What are your thoughts on this? Plus, you're thinking on other identity management technologies like personas, AI-based confidence levels that are calibrated based on how you behave, how you type, how you click or move your mouse, all unique characteristics that AI can give a score to and allow you network and application entry or reduce your access at your confidence as your confidence level decreases. He's saying we use an iFlutter application for liquid nitrogen and oxygen drivers, Axair. we would order the driver into a rest stop.
I'm sorry, Ariel, that was that last point that you and Vlad were talking about. So in terms of speed governors, those big tank cars that go down the road that you see on the highway, they all have speed governorship and eye flutter monitors on them. If they see the driver starting to doze off, the driver gets contacted and ordered into the next rest stop.
All right. So again, like anything else, two-edged sword, right? As I mentioned before about the sign behind me in Belarus, right? The government in Belarus is using cameras to recognize the protesters right now and arresting them all over the place. Is it good? No, it's not. It's bad. All right. The recognition of the criminals who did the criminal act, is that good? Probably yes. Right. So where is that border? Now, biometrics. We're trying to use biometrics or behavior for everything. Right. Why? Coming back to the Ariel point, if protection of the asset, which costs $10,000, costs you $1 million, do we want to do that? No, right? So now you have to recognize the crown jewelers of the company, right? The biggest crown jewelers assets should be protected with like the most important cost, right? And guess what? If social engineers get the target on your crown jewelers, right? Biometrics will not help you. Because they will find a person who has access, absolute legit access, and push them to do something, okay? Or pretend that person using the complete persons because they already know what's going on. So in my opinion, it's like, remember a long time ago, we had the lock on the car, this like a big red, thing on the car. You know what is the biggest reason why people bought that stuff? Because if your car has it and the next car does not, the thief will choose next car. That was the biggest reason to buy this, right? But the same thing goes here. A lot of things we're overkilling, where we're just overdoing it. But in a lot of stuff, we're not doing it. So I am much more into PAM world of privilege access management instead of controlling everybody. I am much more into concentrating on really protecting something which worth protecting. And let other things go in a much easier way. Yes, if something bad happened, we should have ability to back it up, right? Or to have some kind of disaster recovery for the small things, right? But at the same time, controlling every step. I remember when I was working at the city in Jacksonville, all of us has to go through the retina scan. Do you know what lines were during the lunchtime to get into the building? It was ridiculous. They calculated that, think about it, this is castidity right there, okay? It takes around 2 minutes to go through because of errors and angle and whatever it is. 2 minutes. You have 2,000 people going out. 2 minutes each. Everybody have to wait for others. Every day they were losing around 200 hours. 200 hours because of that. Right? If you multiply it by the salary, plus multiply it by the, how much the system costs, everybody said like, that makes no sense. So what they changed the policy, they moved it away and put this thing only server rooms, on the real protective things when they, account some serious stuff. But getting into the building, goes through the ice scan. Really? Do we need it? So think about it, right? But another thing, the controversy coming, privacy versus security. That's the big discussion, and we need to have a completely separate discussion on that. I'm standing on the people-centric security platform saying, give people more chances, but protect them. Give them recommendations, give them guardrails, but do not put the fence around your building, okay? That would be much better service to everybody.
So that kind of leads me to a question around what would you advise from a practical perspective for the C-level people when they're trying to look at how do we protect the assets from a human factor perspective?
First of all of them should see this beautiful cartoon made a long time ago on LinkedIn, very popular, which was a birthday party. I don't know if you saw that. There was a big table with all of the C people sitting. There was a children's table, and there was a little children's table, and there was a lot of little children sitting, and the dude would say IT right over here. All right. And then the people, IT security, I'm sorry, over there. And then there is a big boss coming. Now you're allowed to sit at the big children's table. Okay, so that symbolizes the relationship between the IT security and the whole organization, right? So what I'm recommending for, yeah. What I'm recommending for the C-level people is to understand one thing, that cybersecurity is a job for everybody. Everybody has to be involved, as I said before. Just engage people with positive incentives, right? And also remember that people who are doing your IT security, it's an exhausting job. One of the reasons why we have such a shortage of SOC people, for example, is because nobody can survive more than 2 or 3 years working that job. Okay, it's so stressful. It's like, you know, it's flight dispatchers, the same thing, right? So recognize that. Recognize that people are humans, and you know they need help instead of being zinged all the time. And also build the culture in the company of learning and educating each other openly, discussing things openly, right? Don't make a decision for them and just jump on them on the waterfall method. How about agile in here? Where is agile, right? I want agile in making decisions and policies. Okay, that might my recommendation. And another recommendations when it comes to budget, right? You have to remember that the good calculation should include human factor. You cannot just make budget decisions based on technology only or just assets only. Your people are your biggest assets, okay, especially today. So just recognize that and definitely get involved in the board and have a conversation with board members. I would say we need to have to reach from the meeting number one, long time ago with Rutgers, I already told you guys that I think one of the biggest issues we do not have enough conversation with board members who make real decisions. We need to open that and tell them exactly the same what I just said today.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. So what are your final thoughts in terms of what would you like to leave us with today?
Well, again, my final thoughts coming again to the same thing was just we just said about it. Please, since most of us are in the IT security and cybersecurity business, remember that most of the people are not. Okay, so what we assume that we know and they know, they don't know. Okay, so be open with them, right? That's one thing. The second thing, always, you know, remember that culture of the company is what makes company secure, right? Bring this message to your C-level people. Bring this message to whoever you know. Even if you play, I don't know, golf with them, it doesn't matter. And the third thing is, I would always suggest that every time there is a decision to be made, it has to be discussed on the people-centric way. It has to be discussed with all of the angles, including, and most important, including the person angle. As I said before, you know, if you have any questions about particular models like custody or methods I've done before, please contact me. I would be very happy to talk. And I hope our meeting and our conversation was helpful. Again, as I said before, I have to finish with that too. If you have any of your friends or relatives from Belarus or colleagues, please give them a hug, support them. Right now they need it. All right. Thank you
Thanks,
very,
Vlad.
very much. I appreciate it.
All right. There aren't any more questions. If we have time for a few more questions, maybe one more question, if anybody wants to ask a question in the chat. And if not, we'll give you your 4 minutes back, as I always say.
Thank you very, very much. It was a pleasure, Ariel, as usual. Hope to have more of those conversations. Thank you very much.
You're so welcome. All right. Everyone have a great day. Stay well. Stay out of the humidity, and we'll see you in the next Cyber Insight series. And Vlad, thank you for being on the program.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Have a great day. Bye.
Thanks.